Thanks for watching our video. Before we move on to the fun stuff, go ahead and pause this video and take a look at our disclaimer.
So today, woohoo, we are Team 2-Day Child Coaching, and we will be discussing all things shoes for babies and toddlers. As always, I'm Rachel Lynn. I am the communication and feeding expert, and as always, I am joined by my incredible team, Miss Amber Michelle, our fearless gross motor development guide, and Miss Amanda Ray, our sensory motor whiz and expert, as well as feeding. And so, without any further ado, we will be discussing shoes. An icebreaker question for everyone is, what is your biggest concern when you're buying shoes for your little one? That's a good one.
I really hope that I do that question justice. I'm really hoping that by the end of the hour that any questions that might be in anybody's mind would be answered, except for maybe like what shoes are coming out this season. I do have that information. I don't think we're going to have time to get into it today, but I want to put together a freebie to link with this talk and then also put up on our website because I think it's really important. And gosh, it's just so overwhelming, right? You go into a store and there are shoes everywhere. Walmart has entire aisles dedicated. There's one whole aisle for boys and one whole aisle for girls. And there are so many options and you can just get really overwhelmed. I know that I can get overwhelmed by having all of those different options because you can't always trust the clothing and shoe companies to make a good, solid shoe for your kiddos.
Might look cute.
Yeah, they might be real cute, but they might be really terrible for your kiddos' feet developmentally. So I always get asked, Amber, what type of shoe do you recommend for these kiddos? And really, it's a tough question to ask because shoes do come and go season to season. But there are a couple of companies that I typically point people to. So just really quickly, I like Stride Right a lot. Now, I'm not saying that everything that Stride Right does is great because I have a couple of examples here of Stride Right shoes that I'm like, they have a couple of things that I like, but they could have done better. But there are some really, really awesome Stride Right shoes out there. I also really like New Balance. I just recently saw that Nike is doing a first walker shoe. I don't have that one. I've seen videos. I'm interested to see it in person to see if it actually is going to do everything that it says it's going to do. But my usual go-to for new walkers is going to be a Stride Right soft motion shoe. They're awesome. Today we're going to talk about like the different developmental milestones. We're going to talk a little bit about walking and when to expect walking and then when to introduce shoes for your littles. We'll talk a little bit about foot development in babies and toddlers. And then we're going to focus a big chunk of time on how to choose the right shoe because that really is the biggest question and the most frequent question that I get. We'll talk a quick bit about proper fit and sizing. And then we'll also dive into common foot and shoe related problems and solutions that we've found as pediatric therapy experts. And if we have time, we'll go over a couple of my top picks for this season's shoes if we can. And then we will end it out with rhythms and routines to establish early on when introducing shoes. And first thing we're going to talk about are developmental milestones, right? You don't really want to introduce shoes too early. I mean, you can introduce shoes too early, but I just kind of think that baby shoes for kiddos who aren't pulling to stand and aren't trying to take individual steps, I think they're just an unnecessary expense. If you've got them because you were gifted them or you like them because you think they're cute, by all means, put them on your baby. But for me personally, it was like, why am I going to buy shoes that are never going to be worn to walk? To just like insert there, if you are putting your little baby who is not weight bearing on their feet in shoes, just make sure that they're nice and flexible. Like we like to see moccasins, something that's some type of cloth on the bottom and the base of the shoe. I don't think I have any here. I don't, because again, I never bought them, but just make sure they're nice and soft, because you don't want to try to shove a teeny tiny squishy thick fat baby foot into a really rigid shoe, because that's not going to be a good thing for their foot development moving forward. I like to see shoes to be introduced right around the time whenever a kiddo is starting to pull to stand, taking a couple of independent steps between two solid surfaces, just because this is a good time to get them familiar with shoes. You don't have to even put them on them initially. You can get them out of the box and have them in the environment, let them play with them a little bit, discover them. I know that Amanda's like shaking her head because she's like, this is an awesome sensory technique, right? Because it's an early introduction of something that might be new and a little bit scary, especially for kiddos who maybe don't like things touching their feet. So you can do that introduction, and then whenever, for me, the rule of thumb is when we're leaving the house and I've got a new walker, or I've got a kiddo who's taken a couple independent steps, we're just going to go ahead and put shoes on so we make it a routine. If we're home or we're like outside playing maybe in a safe environment, we're going barefoot, because really barefoot is best at this point. It's really going to help to strengthen all of those muscles, tendons, and itty bitty bones that are not fully ossified. So they're not fully bone yet. There's still a lot of cartilage in there at this point. But we like to introduce shoes because we don't want to have toddlers who are ripping their shoes off at the playground because they can't tolerate having their shoes being on their feet.
Barefoot is great for sensory exploration as well. So just keep that in mind too. If your little one is in the backyard and they have the opportunity to be exposed to grass and sand and, a variety of textures through their feet, that's ultimately going to help them down the road to be able to tolerate wearing shoes.
Great addition. Thanks, Amanda. And that too, another note on barefoot while outside. It's great outside and inside, but what barefoot outside really does from a PT standpoint is it introduces an unstable environment for that foot. So you're not just walking on hardwood floor that's flat and straight. You're walking over things that are bumpy and squishy and hard and maybe not completely level. So it's really going to give a great workout for those little tiny feet to help to strengthen up muscles, strengthen up arches. It's just, we love barefoot play, but shoes are necessary. So we have to introduce them, right? All right, we talked about the anatomy of a baby's foot, right? So they're just kind of squishy and fat. I don't have a good model here. I wish that I did, but you can look for one in the freebie that I'm going to develop. I'll make sure to put a good picture in there. Really what you're looking at is going to be a foot that's not totally ossified, right? The bones are not formed because they're just itty bitty, and all of their bones are still cartilage, and their foot really it's developing and it's strengthening through these processes. So because it's developing, we have to make sure that we're putting it in a good, supportive, spacious shoe so that we are not forcing development in one specific direction, but we're actually allowing for natural development here. And I know if you don't know shoes, you might not be able to see the difference here. If you do know shoes, you might be able to see a little bit of difference, but this is a really good segue into choosing the right type of shoe. So if you're looking for a shoe for a new walker, so this is maybe a 12-month-old, 13-month-old, 14-month-old, and right now the CDC's recommendation is that a kiddo is walking by 15 months. So anywhere between 12 to 16 months of age, you're going to be considered a new walker depending on their skill level. And that's going to be whenever you're choosing first shoes. These are a little bit too big because all of my other ones are in storage. This one's a little bit smaller. But there are 4 characteristics that I really, really like to see in a shoe. And for these new walkers, I'm really not willing to give on any of them. I want all 4 of these characteristics in these specific shoes. As they get older, I'm dumping sand all over myself.
They're not model shoes. They are live action shoes.
That's
Ooh. So anyway, real life shoes that are in use, right? So there's 4 characteristics. The first one is a straight last of the shoe. And you're probably like, Amber, what in the world is a straight last? So let me get a tool here. The last is the line on the bottom of the shoe. So you'll see that this one here, I like to use a straight pen. And you can see here from the heel up to the top of the toe, that shoe is making a nice straight line. That's what we want to see in these kiddos' shoes. We don't want to see this whole big curve. This one's not too bad. I should have brought an adult shoe up here with me, but if you take your shoe, any of your shoes, especially women's dress shoes, oh, they're bad for this, right? So that's good. There's going to be a curve in that last, and you can actually see the curve here in this guy because there's way more shoe on this side than there is on this side whenever you're holding that pen straight up and down. So that is going to be more of a curve, whereas this guy is nice and straight. Okay, so that's number one, a straight last. Number two, big wide toe box. I like to see a big wide toe box because our toes are actually meant to splay out as we are shifting our weight from our heel towards our midfoot, and our toes will actually spread out in that phase of walking that we see. And so if you've got a big wide toe box, those toes are going to have the ability and the independent movement to be able to splay and come together as needed to help to support that nice normal heel to toe walking pattern. And another thing that I really, really like to see, it's only one area where I would not want this, but I like to see a adjustable strap over the top of the foot that's going to help to lock that foot inside of the shoe. This is going to be really important. The only time that I'm okay with this not being here is when you're in a rain boot, because it's really hard to find a rain boot that has a good solid strap. They are out there, but they're expensive and they're really, really hard to come by. So if you're in any other shoe other than a rain boot, I really like to see that nice Velcro adjustable strap to be able to lock that foot in there so that foot is not moving in and out of the shoe as they're taking steps and walking around.
And Amber, I also noticed that those toe boxes are contained. They're not open.
Yes. Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about that later.
Okay.
So that's like a fifth characteristic that's like I have a contingency on, and I have like some personal experience with this right now because my daughter has some really torn up toes from taken off barefoot. But the last characteristic that I have to see in a new walker shoe is sole flexibility. I have to be able to bend the heck out of that shoe to make sure that it's not, I don't know if you guys can see the sand falling out of this shoe. I need to stop playing. But I need to be able to, and this shoe is actually brand new. This one's not ever been worn because it's the next size up for my daughter. So it's nice. I'm not working hard at all to bend the sole of this shoe. In the heel a little bit, but that will loosen up the more she wears it. I like to see a good flexible sole because that's going to, again, help develop that nice heel to toe off pattern in gait. It's not going to have them have, like, if you have a boot that's really, really solid, boots are necessary. Boots are hard. We'll talk more about boots later. But if you have a more solid boot like this one, it's just going to be a slap every time their heel hits that ground because there's no give in this part of the shoe here. Like you can see, I really have to work hard to move that shoe around. And I have really strong hands. So it's just going to be a slap to the ground. And then most boots will adapt a little bit to a toe off, but you got to remember these babies are itty bitty and their feet are not very strong. So it's going to be really tough for them to actually have a toe off without scuffing up the front of the boot here. So you can see this pair of boots that they did get worn because my daughter learned to walk in the middle of winter. So we had to have a boot, right? But those toe boxes get really scuffed up really easily. If you've got a shoe that has a really solid sole, it's going to be tough for them to have that good toe off and they might catch that toe. Another time that they might catch that toe is whenever they're in open-toed shoes. So I actually, I went shopping for these. I picked these out because I really, really liked them. I had heard the myths they're not myths, they're fact, that open-toed shoes aren't the best option for babies and toddlers. And I kind of thought, okay, I understand why, but I'm gonna go ahead and try it anyway because, like, look at how cute they are, right? And I like them. And they passed my test, right? So they've got a nice straight last. They're really bendable. They've got really nice adjustable Velcro on the front and the back. It's got a good heel cup, so it's going to keep the foot in there. Like, I was really, really happy with this shoe until I learned through experience that kiddos, these babies and toddlers, we all have a really important muscle. It's called our tibialis anterior. It is the muscle that picks our toes up from the ground so that our toes don't skim the bottom of the ground as we drag our foot through. And that's what happens for these kiddos who don't have that developed muscle yet. It might happen sometimes, but it's not happening all the time, especially as they're fatigued. So whenever that muscle doesn't fire properly, and they're taking that step through, instead of their toes lifting to swing that foot through, their toes will actually drag on the ground, and it'll take the skin right off the tops of the toes. And that will actually happen if you let your kiddo go barefoot running on concrete and or blacktop too. That's what I'm dealing with right now because I've got a toddler who will take off without wearing her shoes. So we've got a big old boo-boo on one of our toes. But what I like to see instead of open-toed shoes are these really nice, Stride Right makes these guys. These are, again, the soft motion shoes. They are sandal tennis shoes for the summer. So they're really, really nice because they are structured just like a tennis shoe, but they've got lots and lots of ventilation. So they're kind of like a sandal. I've also scoured Walmart for our girl moms out there. Walmart will make they make some really crummy, but they also make some really awesome shoes. So if you go in and you think about these 4 characteristics that you want to see, 4.5, if you're thinking about closed-toed, this is also another great option for a sandal because, again, it's got a pretty straight last, right? A little bit of a curve, but it's pretty straight for a Walmart brand. It's got that nice adjustable Velcro. It's got a really nice bendable sole, and the toe is covered. And you'll see that in pretty much all of these. And yeah, and these are actually really cute. These are our church shoes for most of the time. So those are my 4.5 characteristics that I have to see in a new walker shoe. Now with toddlers, sometimes I'll give and take on those, right? Like if you're going to wear a pair of shoes to church and they're going to be worn for an hour once a week, and you want them to look really pretty and really nice, like a shoe like this is not going to form bad development in your child's foot if you're wearing it for an hour once a week and you want your kiddo to look nice because you're going to church or you're doing whatever it is and you want them to look nice. So, right, like an hour once a week isn't going to hurt them that much, right? And this shoe still has a couple of those characteristics. It's got a mostly straight last. It has a really, really nice adjustable strap here. And of course, it's closed-toed. It's got a really good heel cup, but it's not super duper flexible. And if you look at it, it's got like the teeny tiniest little bit of a heel. And I don't like, this one's really not bad. Like there are some, I don't even have a good example here. I guess I can use the boots that have built-in heels in them. Cannot. Please don't put your babies in boots that have heels in them because we don't want to see toe walkers.
So Amber, does the heel dissuade from the heel strike and puts more pressure on the toes?
Necessarily, it's just we're not meant to, and this goes for any of us too, right? Like women who wear stilettos, like 5-6 inch heels, like we're not meant to walk in that way, and so it can just change the way that our gait pattern flows, right? So again, having them in this shoe for an hour once a week, it's not going to sway their gait pattern. But if you're having them in this shoe every single time you leave the house and you're doing a lot of walking and a lot of activity with them, that's whenever I'm encouraging people to say, hey, like, can we think a little more critically about the shoe that we're wearing during these really active times? Because what can happen, right? This is circumstantial. I'm not saying that shoes with heels are going to make your child toe walk. That's not at all what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that it can change their gait pattern to potentially lead to something like toe walking, especially if you've got a kiddo who's already kind of prone to toe walking for whatever reason, unless they're being seen by a PT who wants them in boots with heels. Like that's a completely different thing. I'm not your PT. So if your kiddo is a toe walker and you're being treated by a PT who knows what they're doing and they've got you in a boot with a heel, I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to somebody who,
general education.
Yeah, I'm talking to somebody who's like trying to pick out shoes for this fall and this winter for their baby. Try to get something that's going to be nice and solid, because you can see the difference here, right? Like you see there's a heel here. That heel is going to be lifted up off of the surface. Whereas like in this rain boot, there is no heel built in here at all. You can't really, it's hard to see. And it's a little hard to tell because the sole here is a little thicker, but it goes clear into the base of this shoe. So there is maybe a 1 to 2 degree increase from toe to heel here, as compared to this would be probably a 4 to 5 degree change. And that's a really, we're thinking like, ooh, woohoo, 5 degrees. That's actually a really big deal whenever you're thinking about gait mechanics. And I'm not going to go like crazy into that because I don't want to bore you all. So yeah, those are the characteristics that I like to see in a shoe. Now, what do you do for kids with flat feet? I'm going to go a little bit out of order. I would like to have addressed this in common shoe related issues, but it kind of fits in well here. For babies who are walking, learning to walk, normal, typically developing kiddos who are not gross motor delayed, when they're learning to walk, if their feet are flat, I'm not super surprised because their feet aren't strong. They don't have the muscle integrity that they need to be able to develop a good arch. So I would say that the vast majority of kids are going to be flat-footed as they're learning now. And so again, I would just want them in like a stride right soft motion, something that has all 4 of those characteristics that I talked about earlier. A caveat with that is, however, if you as a parent feel that the flat-footedness that you're seeing in your developing child is inhibiting them or is keeping them from being able to pull to stand, being able to stand independently without holding on to anything, if it's keeping them from taking steps, if it's keeping them from cruising along furniture, that's when we need to have a conversation with our care team and say, hey, here's what I'm noticing. And I don't really want to play the wait and see game. I really would like somebody who knows something about feet to look at my child's feet. And that's when you can ask for a referral to a pediatric PT, because they're going to be able to look at your child head to toe. They're going to be able to take a really good look at that heel bone and look at the angle that the heel bone sits whenever both of their feet's on the floor. And if that angle is curving in too much, then they might end up being put into some type of like small brace. They maybe will be recommended to have some sort of insert for a shoe. But again, that is like an individual case by case circumstance that your physical therapist can help you with. I would love so much to be able to pull up a really cool picture and show you, hey, here's what I like to see in your calcaneal angle. And here's whenever you may need to consider bracing, right? But we're not talking about the population that may need braces here. We are talking about your typically developing kiddo. Long story short, if you feel like the flat-footedness that you're seeing your baby is limiting your baby in their milestone development, bring it up to the doctor, really advocate hard, ask for a referral for a pediatric PT, and hopefully they'll help to steer you in the right direction.
Great education.
Awesome.
Yep.
Cool. wanted to make sure I got all of that in there. So let's see. I talked about common mistakes to avoid when buying shoes. So again, you know, you want to look at things that don't have heels. You want to look at things that have that really nice straight shape. And now that we've talked about last, you guys can kind of see, I hope that you can see the difference in these two shoes here. This is a Stride Right shoe, guys. I was really disappointed whenever I got this shoe in the mail because I paid for this. I didn't think it was going to have this much of a curve whenever I bought it, but everything else with it is good, right? It's got a big curve. The toe box is not as wide as I would like it to be, but it's still not super pointy. This is another one of those sandal tennis shoes. So I purchased this thinking that maybe I would need a bigger shoe size towards the end of the summer. So we're not going to be in this shoe a very long time, if at all. I might resell it. I don't know. We'll see. But it's pretty flexible. Do I wish that I would have just bought a bigger size and a soft motion shoe? Yes. Yes, I do. So, you know, even pediatric PTs make mistakes whenever they're buying shoes. It's okay. If you live in the States and you bought this, you could send it back. But I live in Germany, so I can't send it back. Moving on, let's talk about proper fit and sizing. This is really quick and easy. A lot of times people are like, I don't know what size shoe my child needs. It's tough if you've got a first-time walker and you're not taking them into a store. I get that. What I like to do and what I've done personally in the past with my daughter is I actually trace her foot on a piece of paper if I can get her to stand still long enough to do it. And then I cut that out and I'll take it into the store so that I don't have to put her foot into a shoe if she's like sleeping or if she's grumpy or if she's not with me. So I can like toss that piece of paper in my purse, in my wallet, in the diaper bag, whatever. And then I just have to hold the shoe up to that piece of paper that I have cut out, and, you know, don't pick a shoe that the piece of paper is bigger than, essentially, right? And now this is not like, it's not a science. You might have a little bit of give and take, especially if you don't get a good outline traced, but it's a quick and days to get an approximation on a shoe size. If you're not sure, you can buy a half size up, because then they've got a little more room to grow. And as long as the shoe that you're buying has a good adjustable strap on it, you don't have to worry about the foot moving in and out of the shoe a whole lot. And if you're worried about that, then you can make sure that you're wearing a pair of socks on their feet whenever you've got them in shoes anyway. And this is actually something I didn't put in our outline, but it popped up into my head. So this is an extra little tidbit. Babies and toddlers' feet sweat 2 to 4 times more than adult feet. So you really want to make sure that you've got socks on them anytime that they're wearing any type of like tennis shoe, boot, dress shoe. Sandals are okay. I don't wear socks on my daughter in these like vintage shoes, or like these vintage shoes. I have quims with these guys too. But any other types of shoes, you're really going to want to wear socks on them, because if you don't, their feet are going to sweat and the shoe is going to get yucky, and then they can have skin breakdown and blisters, and it's just not, it's not conducive for success. So put socks on your babies, even if they rip them off whenever they're in their car seats. Amanda, do you have anything to add there about how to do sizing guides? I know that a lot of websites will actually have like a sizing printout for parents to use if you're only online shopping, but you've got 2 kiddos yourself. So do you have any other pieces of advice for sizing?
Yeah. You can measure as well, right?
Yeah,
Using
that's
a
it.
fabric, a measuring tape really quickly and get that measurement. And then you can use, take that same fabric. Usually they come in a very small, like little plastic container, right? So that's a really good way as well. And then, and don't hesitate to take your child in and try a few things too. Width is another important thing to consider. If you have a shoe that's too narrow, and that big wide toe box is going to solve that issue, right? A narrow shoe oftentimes can cause problems because it's not going to be comfortable for your little one, and then they're not going to want to wear the shoes. So
yeah, especially if you've got a kiddo who's got like chunkier feet. I know that couple of brands that do really awesome with wide options are Stride Right and New Balance. So if you've got a kiddo with wide feet and you don't know where to look, start there. All right. And that kind of moves us along into our common shoe related issues and solutions. So we talked about flat feet. We talked a little bit about toe walking. Let's see, Amanda, I think this is where you can go ahead and take over.
Yes, absolutely. So, what I really wanted to talk about was how to get your child to keep their shoes on. So, common issue, right, that we can sometimes run into is our little ones either just don't like wearing shoes, they don't want to keep those shoes on. We have touched on a few of my pointers already. And that just goes to show what a great group we are, right? But I think, first of all, making sure you have the correct fit. So, we talked about width in particular. When shoes are too narrow, that's really when I see the biggest issue. Sometimes kids will just cry when they get those shoes on, and that should be an indicator to you that something's wrong. Something isn't right about the way that they're fitting. Um, Let's see. I love this one. Getting your little ones involved in selecting the shoe. So if you are able to take them to the store, maybe they have a color that they prefer. Now, of course, you're looking at those characteristics that Amber just covered, right? And making sure that we can check those boxes, not just letting if you're like me, the 4-year-old, when we were shopping for shoes before school, wanted these silver princess dress shoes that were very narrow, pointed toe, and had a heel, right? So that was, a little bit of a struggle to get through in the store. But yeah, so, but aside from that, they meet those characteristics of the right shoe, and maybe they get to choose the color. Maybe it's a shoe that has little light ups or squeaks or, all of the things, right? So just think about that. When they have that buy-in, they're more interested in wearing the shoe, right? Because they picked it out or they know that it's their favorite color, purple or whatever. Really establishing a routine. And I know Rachel's going to touch on this more in depth in a little bit, but that is very important. Having that spot where the shoes go, having the routine of sitting down and putting them on and taking them off. And again, Rachel will dive deeper into that. Really setting boundaries and sticking to them is important. So if we decide as a family that, anytime we're going outside or out the front door, shoes have to be on, then stick with that boundary. If we can be barefoot in the backyard or certain places within your home, in and out, then that's fantastic. We encourage that. Just stay true to your boundaries. Oh, shoes have to be on if we're going to go to the park. Shoes have to be on if we're going to the store, things like that. Let's see here. Gradual exposure. So you don't have to wear shoes all day, every day. And that's definitely not something that we want. Barefoot is best. Amber talked about that. But really, that gradual exposure is key. So try putting the shoes on for 5 minutes. If that's too long, back it up to 2, and really just go from there. Make it fun, you guys. So a part of choosing the shoes that we like is a piece of that. But also, hey, we're going to put on our shoes and then we're going to play with our stomp rocket. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that toy, but it's basically a rocket. You stomp on a little piece of it and the rocket shoots in the air. A fun game like that. Or we're going to swing. Sometimes it's hard for kids to put on their shoes and go directly into the car because what do? As soon as they get in their car seat, they take their shoes off. Yep. Yep. It's, I have one of our directors at our daycare. She's hilarious. She was like, we lost multiple pairs of shoes because my daughter would throw one out the window. She wouldn't realize it.
Before I became a parent myself, I remember just like noticing like random abandoned shoes like in a parking lot or in a parking spot. I was that judgmental person, guys. I was like, how do you not know that you lose your kid's shoe? And now we haven't lost a shoe yet, knock on wood. We've almost lost shoes, but like, man, I totally understand because they're Houdinis. They rip them off anywhere.
You open the car door and it rolls out, or you haven't even closed the door yet and they already have it off and it's down on the ground. And It happens, right? So sometimes it's nice to have a transition activity before you get into the car. So we put on our shoes, we do something fun like the stop rocket, then we get into the car. They've kind of forgotten about the shoes at this point in time. You just think about that when you're thinking about your daily routines and what might work for you and your family. Let's see what else we have on here.
And
Positive reinforcement. Go ahead.
oh, just I was just going to add to that, Amanda, just that the importance of wearing shoes when you are in public, not only for what Amber was mentioning as far as your toes and the skin and the toenails and all of that protection, but even just possibly stepping on something that's not meant to be stepped on, something that's glass or some other sharp object. And so the importance of wearing shoes versus and actually even there's funguses, right? There's athlete's foot, there's planter's warts, there's other stuff out there that, you know, once you get around other people, you really do want to make sure that your child's feet are protected.
Chemicals, right?
Yeah,
In the environment, all sorts of things. So
absolutely.
yeah, great points. We were starting to talk about positive reinforcement. So rewards are good. Praise is a positive reinforcement. Okay. So it doesn't always have to be like food or toys or whatever, just really praising your child for doing a great job putting on their shoes. Sticker charts are good. And there's nothing wrong too with, a treat or a little reward of some sort. That's okay too. But I'm just saying it doesn't always have to be that. So I'm a big fan of sticker charts. Once you get your 5 stickers, then you get a prize, and that's a fun activity. It's a fun fine motor activity as well, right? To put the sticker on your chart and all of those things. So positive, praise, keep it fun, keep it positive. Really, another piece that goes along with that is don't make such a big deal of it. It shouldn't be a negative thing. We want to keep it positive. You keep calm, keep your composure. It's not you have to put these shoes on or else, right? But how can you make it fun? How can you make it a game and keep your cool and not let on that we're making a big deal of this while we're getting shoes on? Let's see. Giving your child autonomy and choices really, promotes independence, right? So maybe they get to choose. Do you want to wear this pair or this pair? And we don't need to, especially for our little ones. We don't want to give them all of the choices necessarily, right? But do you want the red or the purple today? That kind of thing. That really is helpful. Again, they feel like they're in control of what's going on and more likely to, engage and participate in putting those shoes on. Allow them to choose, or I'm sorry, practice putting them on and taking them off. Of course, we can't always do this when we're trying to get out the door, right? I mean, life happens. And if we need to get in the car because we're already 5 minutes late, that's not going to be your time to practice. Certainly, building those opportunities in throughout the day is really, really important. Our little ones are so proud when they can figure it out and learn to do it on their own, right? So helping them through that. And even just to a point we made earlier, just allowing them to explore the shoe and having access to it is great. Let's see. A big topic that we haven't touched on yet is sensory issues. So some of our little ones just have tactile defensiveness or tactile sensitivities to socks, shoes, seams on socks, all kinds of things, right? So what are some ways to get around that if that's an issue? The first thing with the sensory desensitization is just that exposure to barefoot play, right? As they're growing and developing, and this happens way before we're ready to put shoes on, let's make sure that our little ones have the opportunities to play in water with their feet. They can play in the grass, like we talked about earlier, the hardwood floor versus the carpeting. Just exposure to different textures on their feet helps to really desensitize, and it helps to prepare them to tolerate different textures on their feet. So, and again, that might be a gradual exposure thing. Maybe that is a big challenge for your child. Well, let's not throw them in the middle of a backyard and walk away. You have some gradual exposure. Maybe have a blanket and they can just touch their toes to the grass and bring them back, touch their toes and bring them back, things like that. If you have a little one that's very, very sensitive, then consider a sensory bin. So take a bucket or any sort of container. You could put all kinds of different things in it and change it up, right? Like popcorn kernels or rice or, dried beans. You could put sand, all kinds of different things that they can put their feet in the bucket and explore as a way of desensitizing when they have that tactile defensiveness. Now, we talked about socks. So just for a minute, the seam that runs along the toe of the sock is something that can be very, very annoying to all of us. I mean, someone in this room might have an issue with that seam, right? There are now seamless socks all over the place. You can find them anywhere, like Amazon. A lot of big brands do make seamless socks. So consider that if you have a child that when you put those socks on, you're seeing that they're fussy or crying or having a hard time with that, consider seamless socks. It could be a game changer for your little one. Also, some socks that have all kinds of different patterns like unicorns and rainbows. Can you tell I have two girls? but those kinds of socks, a lot of times, if you flip them inside out, you'll see that there's all of this string or like material that creates this texture inside of that sock. So that might be something to consider as well. Just a plain, solid, seamless sock that looks virtually the same inside out or not is great.
And
highly recommend.
Another point to add to that too, Amanda, is whenever you do flip those socks inside out, if it does have the seam at the bottom or if it has like a bunch of colors woven into it, a lot of times you can get loose strings on the inside of the sock, and that puts your kiddo at risk for developing a tourniquet around their little toes. And that can be really dangerous too, because then you can cut off the circulation of their little toes and potentially, self-amputate by accident. And that is like a really, really, really big concern. So if if you're a new parent, if you're an experienced parent and you're buying socks, like just flip them inside out and check for all of those little types of loose strings and whatever. And if you want to just avoid that totally, take Amanda's advice and buy those seamless socks.
Great point. Yes, we've all heard of the nightmares that can happen with like a hair, and it's the same exact concept there. So absolutely. I know the unicorns and the rainbows, they're fun, but they may not be the best choice. So just keep that in mind. We talked about allowing your little one to explore their own shoes already. And I think that's everything on my list.
Awesome. Thanks for adding all of that, Amanda. That's really important stuff. And I think that it's information that it's not widely known, right? That's not something that you see pediatricians going over frequently during visits, right? There's not like a, hey, here's an information sheet about how to handle and introduce and like keep kids to keep their shoes on, right? So that's awesome stuff. Rachel, why don't you go ahead and dive on into our rhythms and routines with shoes?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. Basically, one of the biggest things with that rhythm of routines is to have a specific place that a child sits down and join them. Sit down with them. Put on your shoes, take off your shoes. I like the concepts actually of shoeless homes, or I should say shoes outside and not inside, or you can have your own type of moccasin or slipper for inside, but outside shoes stay outside. That's just my own personal but anyway, with that, having a little stool or a chair or something like that propped up next to your door that you go outside, and then you can sit down, your child can sit down. That's just part of the routine. This is what we do, and you do it every time you go in or out, like Mr. Rogers when he would come in and do the same thing. And so again, encouraging with that modeling with your own self, right? So you come in and you sit down and you put on, or you take off your outside shoes and put on your inside shoes or no shoes. And before your child's even putting shoes on, or you're putting those shoes on for your child, if you start this routine and you do this routine, your child's going to be seeing that everybody in the house is doing the same thing. And so it's not even going to be something foreign, like, oh, hey, you've graduated, you're wearing shoes, now we're doing this before we go out of the house. It's just going to be natural and and fluid with your family because you've been doing it. So that's one suggestion. Let's see, having solid rules around shoe use outside and in public places. Now, this one again, Amanda Ray really talked about how there are some things that can influence sensitivity, or it could even be the ill-fitting shoe or sock, right? Maybe your child is kind of like, I don't like the way these socks feel on my feet, or the way that these shoes pinch me for some reason. Maybe even take your own fingers and go through the shoes every so often to see, is there a little rock, or is there something in there that could be possibly bothering you? How many times do you put on your own shoes? And there, I mean, you know, Amber was showing us earlier with the sand. There might be something in there. Your shoe looks perfect, but there might be something in there that is just aggravating. And so that could be a reason why your kid's like, I don't want to deal with it. But anyway, having solid rules around that, and again, modeling that when you go outside, look, everybody else has their shoes on. You're going to be in your stroller until you put your shoes on. I mean, that's just the way it is. They're all wearing their shoes, and keep consistent with it. That's one of the biggest things as well. The one time, I mean, this is how Vegas is built, right? And any casino is in business is because it's an odds game. So if you show your child one time that they can get out of their stroller or go into a public place without their shoes, and that's their tendency anyway, oh boy, you're setting yourself up for a really hard time around this then, because your child is going to keep escalating and keep not wanting to do it because you've shown them one time, it could even just be once, that they could get away with it. And so that could set that behavior. Sorry, I know it makes it like, oh gosh, but it's just what we've seen. The other thing I really love about this, though, so with all of these things, what are you doing? You are communicating with your child. So, oh, it's time to sit down. We're going to take our shoes on, put them off, whatever. We're going outside. You're discussing, you're narrating your day, which is such an important piece of exposing your child to more language, especially if it's outside time. Outside typically motivates most kids, and so the more you're using outside words that reference the outside, the more they're not only understanding, but the more they're going to be incentivized to use those words themselves, because I mean, outside means I get to go outside. So that might be one of their first words if you use it with them. One other thing, a trick that I saw years ago, and I know it's kind of popular now, but just to mention it in case you haven't seen it, is taking a larger sticker that, you know, maybe it's like of a character or something, and cutting the sticker straight up the middle and putting each side into your child's shoe. Because another thing that you all well, you might see, and this might be your child too, is that children will put shoes on the backwards. And so by just showing them, again, alleviating this whole thing, right? Shoes, the stickers go in the shoes before a child even really gets used to that. The child can then see, oh, it needs to make a hole. And now I know which feet to go in which shoe. And I think too, I don't know, Amber, what you think, but maybe with the shoes that are kind of less curvy, it's even more challenging to figure out which shoe goes on which foot because they don't have a lot of feedback for the feet.
Right. Yeah. And that's tough, right? Because these shoes, if you look at them, I've got a right and a left shoe here. They're pretty straight, right? There's not a big difference there. I've let my daughter get away with having her shoes on the wrong feet. It's going from the house to the car, because I know that in the car they're going to get torn off anyway, and I can put them on the right feet when we get to the location. But I love that sticker idea is just, I mean, that's such a good idea, right? Because, and even it'll work even better too on shoes that you can take the sole out of, because then you've got like the actual inside. Sometimes they're squishy, but sometimes, like my rain boot here, they can just be like a solid base, and that's really nice because then the sticker is going to have something to adhere to. So that's an awesome tip, Rachel. I would love to go through like 2 or 3 of my top recommendations for shoes, and then a couple of shoes that I like, a couple of types of shoes that I recommend people steer clear of until kids are older. Okay. So top recommended shoe for all types of new walkers, again, stride right, soft motion shoes. You can get them in itty bitty sizes, like size 3, which is like teeny tiny. And then they also go up to like bigger sizes for toddlers, like 6, 7, 8s. Okay. Those are awesome. I love these rain boots, guys. Rain boots are so hard for toddlers and babies. They're so hard because they're all not great, but these are awesome. These are from Amazon. All you have to do is search toddler rain boots on Amazon, and the tree grandpa brand will come up. There's lots of different colors, but how iconic are yellow rain boots? They're
Of course.
So cute.
They're my most sought after rain boot. Love these guys. So those are my top 2. I love these. I've used them. I would tell other people to use them. A couple of types of shoes to steer clear from. These are just like a random off-brand from Amazon. I don't know. I don't even know where I got them. I don't like these guys, and they're kind of trending right now. So unpopular.
Oops.
Yeah, they've got a straight lace, a straight last. Yeah, they've got a big wide toe box, but guys, there is nothing here to keep that foot in that shoe. Like, this stretches out, and as that stretches and stretches and stretches and wears, that foot's going to move inside of that shoe. So from a pediatric PT standpoint, I don't like these. If you're using them and your kiddo is doing great in them, cool. Love that. I personally, it's a no for me.
You like the strap that makes sure that the foot stays.
I like the strap that makes sure that the foot doesn't move inside of the shoe. And then just the other thing about these guys is because the tops are all cloth, it can wear out, and it's just going to get worse the more you wear them. And then the other types of shoes that I tend to steer clear from for kiddos of this age, they're totally fine for older kiddos, right? But it's going to be those shoes that are like rubbery, plasticky, water shoes. There are a couple of really popular brands out there, and we didn't talk about any of them, so you all probably know what they are, but they're all made out of this like ethylene vinyl acetate, EVA, plasticky material. They're not supportive. They cause your kiddos' feet to sweat because there's no breathability, there's no absorption of any type of water or liquid or sweat in these shoes. And so there's a lot of wear and tear that can happen on your kiddos' feet, and they're really just not super supportive. There's a popular brand out right now that's really, really narrow. It's got a really pointy toe. There's another popular brand out there that doesn't have anything to, again, keep the foot stable inside the shoe. So those are brands that I tend to have people who have babies and toddlers steer clear of until they're older.
Well, thank you. This was so fun.
Yes. I want to go shoe shopping now.
If you're viewing it, and keep an eye out on our website for our shoe freebie. I'm hoping to have it completely finished and over to Rachel so that she can get that up on our website. And it's going to have tons of links to this season's shoes. I've scoured like the interwebs on finding the new shoes this season that are going to be pediatric PT stamp of approval.
Awesome. Well, and if you guys enjoyed us today and even just want to connect with us and say hello, find us on Instagram, on Facebook, on YouTube. We read all our comments. It's just us 3. So let us know what you think. Let us know if you've got any questions or concerns or topics even that you're interested in. That let us know if you found that today was interesting. I thought today was super fascinating. There was a ton of stuff that I didn't know about. So thank you so much for teaching me. Does anybody have anything else to share?
No?
Follow, subscribe, and do you want to try our outro?
Let's do it.
1, 2, 3. From all of us here
New day.
at New Day. Have a good day. Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Bye.